We are recording.
Such a good sound.
Mark bringing up the chair. I like it.
Ooh, look at that. Yeah, you're and he's rolling up the chair and he's rolling up his pants.
Yeah,
ladies and gentlemen.
I think I saw a little neck there.
All right, Cinemaphiles and Intrepid Heroes far and wide. This is Timothy Magic.
Colin McLeasy.
This is Mark Culp.
Mark with a K.
Mark
please.
With a K or a C.
Or a C.
I think this is Mark Anthony.
Marky Mark and the funky.
This is Julius Caesar.
This is
Cleopatra. Damn it. There are three people in the room for those that are confused.
Yeah.
And we are
the Cinephiles.
Yeah. Well, we haven't quite come up with a name yet, but
Three Men with a Basement.
3 Men with a Basement or Canton Cinema.
3 Men and a Basement.
3 Men and a Basement or Canton Cinema.
We're the Canton Cinema.
We are. We're out of business. It's been nice knowing you all.
All right.
So
episode 1.
We're gonna kind of riff this intro here in the beginning. Basically, what we're doing here is we are reviewing films, and we're going to see. We're going to give you our 2 cents on this. We are 3 guys who know a decent amount about films, but we're regular schmucks, and we are interested in sharing our opinions on films that you may have heard of, maybe you've seen, maybe you haven't, but we feel that these films may be lesser known, and we would like to lend our opinions to whether or not you should spend the time to see them.
No, my friend Colin, may I interject? I think we're more than just schmucks. But between all 3 of us, we've had decades of experience in the cinema field. Between film study, between working in the multiplex community and the theater community, I think we have a little bit more nuance and experience than just your average Joe.
What my brother Tim here is trying to say is he feels our opinions on the matter are better than yours.
Carry more weight, maybe.
I don't know about you two.
Better or worse is subjective. You are not, sir. We rated your shelf. We rated your 2, 3, 4 bookshelves of movies. So
for you listeners out there, I'm a total cinephile, and I have spent an absurd amount of my own hard-earned money on media that most people will never see. So, with that being said, episode 1, we're here to help. We are reviewing Equilibrium. Equilibrium, for those of you that don't know, we're going to give a quick overview, kind of an IMDb-style overview of the film, just so you can kind of wet your palate. It is a 2002 film directed by Kurt Wimmer, starring Christian Bale, Sean Bean, Emily Watson, Taye Diggs, a handful of other people you may know by face, but maybe not by name. And the IMDb description reads as such: in an oppressive future where all forms of feeling are illegal, a man in charge of enforcing the law rises to overthrow the system and state. All right. So, there you are. There's your sort of abridged version, your IMDb version, if you will. And I would say maybe stop here if you don't want any spoilers. We're going to try to put our ratings in either the description or maybe we'll edit them back into the beginning. But I think from here on out, we're just going to say...
We're going to spoil this bitch?
Spoilers welcome.
It's a 2002 film.
It sort of is.
I think we're within fine continuity time with... Hey, if you haven't seen it by now... Do it. Stop this podcast now and watch it.
For the record, it's 2019. Yeah. What have you been doing with your life?
You tell us. You tell us.
Listen to this
email,
podcast,
call.
I like your opinions.
Tweet at us. We don't have a Twitter yet.
So one other thing we should mention about this film is the genre. This is sci-fi, futuristic dystopia.
It's the Prozac Nation.
It really is.
It's
So
one of
this
my
film,
notes.
sort of transitioning into spoiler territory. This is not giving out too much
It's in the first
beyond
5 minutes.
what IMDb said, but this film is basically 1984 meets Fahrenheit 451 meets Brave New World meets Gattaca.
Yep.
If you string together all of the elements of those films and books that are similar, that sort of vibe together, you've got Equilibrium.
That's great, Colin. I didn't put Gattaca on my list, but I had all those other ones on there too. Yeah, yeah. Any Orwellian, Bradbury dystopic future that you got in mind, that's Equilibrium. Plus some gun kung fu before Wanted came out.
Yeah,
in theaters. Anyways, I think the comic was out before that, but
and I would agree. Maybe along that vein, maybe throw the Matrix in there, both for the dystopic nature and the sort of like future action packed.
Dapper clothing. And,
yes, very sleek.
Authority agents looking kind of thing. No. This is what the clerics are, which is what Christian Bale is. He's a cleric.
So with that, maybe I know Mark, you got a comment, and you can jump in here in a second. Once you say that, maybe we move into our own sort of description of the film. What do you guys think?
Yeah, I think there's been a lot of talk about the I don't know, the facade of the movie. How we're talking about the attributes of it. It's a dystopian movie. A lot of gun kung fu. What spoke to me is the message behind it. I really appreciated their portrayal of an unemotional, very just kind of stoic, society, and a whole government that was, completely constructed with that sole purpose in mind. That, to me, was the most interesting thing, beyond the action and the look and feel of it. But yeah, those are my two thoughts, and I'll dig into that as we go in.
Yeah, I like that feeling, and like you said, gun kung fu, and it reminds me of certain animes and Japanese movies I've seen where faceless assassins, where they just have the blank white masks. That's kind of what I feel like they were kind of going for a little bit with the actors' portrayals, with just their stoic, non-cracking expressions throughout their interrogations and executions of their Fahrenheit 451 raids.
Yeah, definitely. So, kind of building on what you guys have said, maybe we should circle back and sort of do our own description of the film beyond the IMDb description. And basically, what we're looking at is a kick-ass film where you got Christian Bale, who plays a they call it a cleric in the film, and a cleric is basically a person who enforces the law in this futuristic society. This society arose out of the sort of like remnants of mankind after World War III destroyed most of the world. These people banded together and identified human emotion as basically the cause of human suffering. Kind of a sort of Buddhist type philosophy, desire leads to suffering. They sort of took a similar approach but classified basically all human emotion as the cause of war, violence, and suffering. And they built this society in which is kept in line through this through force and through this chemical
medication.
Exactly, mandatory medication in the form of prosium, which is basically the soma of A Brave New World. It's very similar. Yep. It eradicates human emotion and allows you to act basically, I guess, wholly logically, if you might say that.
Yeah, and this is one of the things that I enjoyed most about it is that, and this is just my personal worldview, I can't find fault in that logic. I think as the movie progresses, you they suss out the downfalls to that. But ultimately, I believe if they stuck to that philosophy, it's hard to topple that. When everything is about an unemotional connection, when everything is about logic and rationality, sure, we're going to lose the color of our world, but we're going to have a very efficient, very, by the numbers. There's no room for error when you remove the human element from it.
I'm so glad you brought that up, Mark. Not to cut you off, but I am so glad you brought that up because they intentionally, I think, flashed Soviet era propaganda films with Stalin on the screen because he was so completely removed from that too. Like, everybody's equal, my comrades, except me, who I can prosper and benefit and have my death camps.
Yeah.
So I feel like they were intentional in their imagery.
Very
with
much.
With that execution, that cold and not caring environment, but clearly the higher ups, as you pointed out later on in the viewing.
There was a lot of hypocrisy.
Yeah, hypocrisy going on.
It was interesting
so
that
not everybody's equal.
And
not everybody's uncaring and illogical.
While they were talking about the horrors of war, we were being inundated with images of, Nazi Germany and
Stalin, Russia.
Yeah,
I'm surprised they didn't flash Chairman Mao. I guess they wanted to play better overseas. I don't know.
I think what you were getting at, Mark, I think the goal was really to make that philosophy attractive in the beginning of the film, and then slowly deconstruct it with the understanding that human emotion, and they say this very explicitly in the film, human emotion, though it comes at a cost, and can't be left unchecked, because they say very explicitly, human emotion unchecked is chaos. Life without emotion and without feeling is basically meaningless.
Oh, certainly.
And I think one of the best quotes from the film, and I'm going to botch this, but it's something to the effect of like, without feeling, I'm not sure if she said breath or heartbeats, is just a clock ticking down.
Yep. And that's true, but I would argue that who knows, but the intent of the antagonistic government in this movie was to create a machine, and they weren't trying to perpetuate human life. They were trying to perpetuate existence, and the system that they created was almost flawless in perpetuating existence, but existence is not life. And I think that is what this movie was trying to do.
Absolutely.
And I do love that so many like even minor characters. I love this in this movie where so many minor characters even seem to be waning off the soma, the pros.
Yeah. And
like you can kind of see that in some of the extras, and I'm like, oh yeah, this is like my third time seeing this movie. Full disclosure, it's not my first viewing, so it's like I'm picking up more and more each time I see it. So obviously, I recommend watching it.
yeah, and the beauty that I think they go through, like you said, existence is not life. That sort of showing what is necessary to sustain us as creatures is so critical, and how a regime like that so easily and so quickly feels like they're doing the right thing. I think it's sort of innate in us that basically the worst things that have ever happened in human history have the people who've done them, they think they're doing the right thing. And I think this movie captures that so beautifully, that basically the people committing these atrocities, there is no moral question in their mind. They are doing the right thing.
The best villains are the ones who feel justified in their actions.
Absolutely, and
Always.
that's true of
in storytelling.
That's true in storytelling, and it's true in life,
history.
in life and history.
Yeah.
So real quick before we sort of move on, Mark, you had mentioned that sort of a beautiful phrase, color changing throughout the film. I don't know if you guys had noticed, but one of the most beautiful things about this film, and one reason why I would recommend people see it, is the color palette actually changes throughout the film as the protagonist starts to discover his own emotions. So one of the other movies on our list to review is Pleasantville. But this movie takes a very similar tact, and not a lot of movies have the opportunity to take this, but as it progresses, the color palette becomes more defined, it becomes more diverse, and the color palette is very gray and blue, very drab in the beginning, and as the film progresses, as the main character starts to feel these different things, the colors become more vivid, they become more lively, and more diverse, and it's a really beautiful way of sort of dragging the audience along in this narrative, and in a very, very effective way.
If I remember correctly, yeah, it starts at night with a night raid. One of the big reveal moments for Christian Bale's character, John Preston, Cleric Preston, undergoes such a dramatic change at a sunrise. And he literally tears down his walls.
Oh, there's a scene where his window is covered in this
film,
translucent material.
Yeah, and
he tears that translucent material down. That's just emitting blank, emotionless light.
And it's very early on for him to feel these things for the first time in God knows how long.
Yeah, I think that there's his emotional journey with that is he sees the sunrise, and he sees the color,
sees the city for the first time.
He's flooded with emotions, and he feels dirty.
Yeah, and he sees himself in the mirror for the first time after that.
He rushes to the bathroom.
He wants to cancel it out. Yeah, exactly.
He feels like he's doing something wrong, something illicit, because he's appreciating life. That's a very interesting scene.
It was a very powerful scene, which, on second viewings, it was very good. Yeah. Very good. So don't skip that scene, kids.
So let's transition into some of the things that we liked about it. We're gonna say the things that we disliked for a little bit later here, but let's talk about the acting.
Yeah.
Colin.
So I gotta say, very much along the lines of what you guys were just talking about in terms of truly emoting. I found Sean Bean's a character incredibly compelling. I think Sean Bean is a great actor in the best of times, but goddamn, in this movie, he really for those of you who haven't seen it, the movie is so difficult. It's so right on the line, because you're talking about people, some of which who are under supposed to be under a chemical influence to suppress emotion, and then you've got others who are basically trying to hide the emotion that they are feeling. And Sean Bean's character is one that is riding that line, that's trying to hide, is under great scrutiny, and is really feeling these deep things. And I feel like for his role in the film, he is absolutely incredible in his ability to convey that believably. In a nonverbal way. That's exactly right.
It's fantastic, because we're introduced to Christian Bale and Sean Bean's character in a very similar fashion. They are cut very much from the same cloth. You can tell that from their hairstyles to their uniforms, to their execution of the raids that they're doing, the 451 raids that they're doing, and it's fantastic. But you can a lot of this movie is with the eyes, which is what I love about the conveyance of certain cinema actors. They are just conveying what they're thinking non-verbally.
Yeah, I think you really got
through
the
mouth
impression.
twitches and eye conversations with the eyes.
Yeah, you see Christian Bale's character going through and just annihilating the what you view at that moment as the enemy. And then you see Sean Bean's character in the background observing. He has the same cold detachment, so you really get the feeling that he is also capable of that kind of just divorced, brutality. But he's questioning it. He's observing. He's not actually partaking in the ultra violence.
Another movie on our list, Clockwork Orange.
Yeah.
Stay tuned.
But yeah, you really got the feeling that he was watching something that he had seen many times before, but he had opinions about it that he wasn't sharing. In not the same way that Christian Bale's character, who was there as an instrument. He was a tool. He was very effective. He was very efficient. He was there to do a job, and he was not lingering on those thoughts. Whereas Sean Bean's character was lingering for just a split second longer, and it really was just a split second. He was trying to hide his emotions, but there was like a nuance to it that I really appreciate in his delivery of that.
And that's sort of the beauty is like, for those of you listening at home, we're three fuckheads sitting in a basement and we can all stare each other in the face. And, when somebody wants to say something or do something or interject or has a comment, we know not because that person has said something, but because they have made a face or they have reacted to something that somebody else has said. And that in your personal life as well as we do, and what we're talking about right now is Sean Bean's ability to convey that as an actor to the audience very convincingly. He's not doing it with words. He's doing it basically through movements of his eyes. Yes. And sometimes, ironically, his stoicism in certain instances suggests certain things that you would only be able to understand if you were feeling, if you were emotional, which is wonderful and stands in stark contrast to what's in the rest of this film, because basically everybody is fucking doped up.
Yeah, everybody is, black boots, stoic, just affecting the liberal state, getting those free thinkers out of there. Yeah. Those
I feel the
even though it's called what, Libertaria or something like that. Libertaria or something like that is the continent they're on, or the peninsula. I don't know.
there's an interesting scene, and I don't know if this lends itself to the acting, the directing, or the writing. It could be any or all. But there's a scene where Sean Bean and Christian Bale's character, it's kind of early on in the movie, where they're in a car, and Christian Bale is just talking about something that just happened, and Sean Bean's character mentions something in a phrase. I forget exactly the wording of it, but he presents it as a question at first. There's that nuance to his line. Christian Bale kind of turns to him and just says, excuse me? As if he's surprised that it's being presented as a question. Like, it's not something to think about. And then Sean Bean realizes that he's letting his emotions leak through, rephrases it as a statement, and then the scene progresses. That little just, that nuance to that scene, I really appreciated, because it shows how much scrutiny the individual is under to suppress any kind of curiosity or emotional reaction to anything that anyone says.
So we discussed this a little bit earlier on, or I did. I gotta say, as far as directing is concerned, like, the choice to change the color palette throughout the film, I think, was one of the most brilliant things they possibly could have done. It was a very subtle way to sort of affect the viewer, and let them know what was going on, even if they weren't aware of it.
It's the enlightenment of our protagonist. Yeah, for sure.
So, not to jump too far forward here, but the score I thought was really interesting. They did a lot of, not operatic, but the music was not. It was very emotionless. It was very, I want to use the words like epic and grandiose, but those are not the right words.
So I'm not a huge music guy. I the only instrument I play is the bagpipes, and trust me, what I'm about to say doesn't happen to the bagpipes very frequently. But there were several scenes where they sort of crescendoed, and I'm fucking throwing that term out there, not knowing a whole lot about it. But, I know the colloquial version of crescendo, and several scenes sort of crescendoed in this very epic ending with the score. And I can absolutely say, and I actually paused the film while we were watching it to say, this scene would not have been the same without that score at the end. So, I mean, I was impressed with the score. It didn't carry me through the entire film, but there were definitely points where I noticed the film would not have been the same without it.
2 points for the score for me that really stood out. One, Christian Bale's character, his cleric, discovering that record and just it hitting him. Like I know myself. I don't know about the listeners at home and everybody else, but sometimes when just the right song hits you. Yes, you're just...
Explain that scene a little bit to the listeners.
So, our cleric, Christian Bale's cleric, has just completed a raid after not taking a couple of doses, if I'm remembering correctly. And he raids Mary O'Brien's apartment and finds her secret room with just fixtures of furniture, glassware, books, records, all this stuff banned by the government. Completely illegal. She is going to be set for termination. She's going to be set for, incineration. Along with all her possessions. He takes his time to not report it immediately and just indulge in it. Because he's feeling again. Like, just after that morning routine sequence where he's seeing the sunrise for the first time. And he's just indulging in this amazing score. I forget exactly which classical record I think it's a Beethoven, right? Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a Beethoven score, and he's just indulging in it, and it's hitting him in his mind, and his chest, and his eyes, and he weeps. And it's just a fantastic.
Meanwhile, the entire fucking building is crawling with goons from the government. So, like, you're both sharing this with him, but you're also terrified that at any moment they could break in and discover him, which I think intense.
Leads itself to how powerful it was for him. He was willing to risk that because of the just intoxicating nature of culture.
Mm-hmm. He's never had before. You can get this kind of feeling that he's gone his whole life and never hearing a score like that, never seeing a sunrise like that. I love that about Christian Bale's performance on this. Yeah, he's just it's like you're seeing it through the first time. Yeah, and the second time is, of course, Mary's execution. I think that the score was another powerful moment at that point for him because he could do nothing.
Yeah. So I guess moving on a little bit to the general creativity of this piece, I have a hard time. Well, we're not getting into the things that we don't like about it. Creatively, I personally enjoyed it. I know that it borrowed extensively from other works, but I felt like it gave a genuinely unique spin on an idea that's it's been explored before, but I didn't feel like it was a retread. I felt like I was in a world that was established, that was unique, and I guess creatively speaking, I appreciated.
Yeah, I feel like if you explore it from sort of 3 levels of complexity, you have the very broad overview, the sort of the general concepts, the sort of mid-grade, like what is happening in the film, and then you have like the low-level, like very specific, unique elements of what is going on, say, in each scene. I would say from the highest level, not particularly creative. It is something that has been done before, again and again and again, at least from my perspective. Mid-level, I would say it was a pretty healthy mix. I think they really conjured some uniqueness to what was sort of like an already pretty explored concept of the dystopian future where a autocratic regime takes over, blah blah blah. And I would say at the lowest level, the unique elements that are specific to the film and specific to the scene, I would say high creative points. I would say like this film really, I think it was very aware of itself, or its creators were very aware of this particular issue, and they did their best to make sure that the low-level elements and the mid-level elements that could be sort of made unique or creative were. And I really appreciate that. So I feel like it sort of falls right in the middle. I would give it almost a like sort of a a 5 out of 10 on creativity, and I would maybe give it just a little bit more than that, a 5.5, because I feel like the effort that was put into making it that way, to revising certain elements that didn't necessarily have to be revised, but were because they wanted that sort of creative bend. I think were made. It seemed like were made intentionally, and I appreciate that. So I'd give it maybe like a 5.5 in terms of creativity.
Tim?
Right on. Let's see here. Again, it was just like me just running down the list of what has come before, what has come after. Is it a bad movie? No. Is it kind of a clunky movie at times? At times, yes. So I would stick with the 5.0. 5.0 out of...
for creativity specifically.
For creativity. Yeah, because again, it follows that dystopic future of Brave New World and Fahrenheit 451 very heavily. So 5 out of 10 for that. As far as Soma pills go. Mm-hmm. 5 out of 10 Soma pills for that.
Sorry, Mark, did you have something on creativity that you wanted to share?
No, if you've got more on the top.
No, I was gonna move on a little bit to special effects. I felt like
Kung Fu.
Okay, so for those of you who haven't seen the film, there is a very interesting sort of take on modern warfare, if you will, modern combat. It takes a little bit from karate and a few other Eastern arts that have katas or I'm trying to think of like an English word that sort of describes a kata. Forms, I think they use in English, but
disciplines.
Perhaps that's not like the best way to describe it. It's basically like certain forms that are designed to be offensive or defensive in certain contexts, and individuals in these disciplines will practice certain katas basically in order to train themselves in different situations. In this film, the clerics practice what is called the gun kata, which is basically a combination of statistical inference and as they put it, geometric patterning, which basically allows them to understand the highest probability of where offenders will be in a particular situation and where the highest probability of fire is going to come from, the angle of fire, so they can basically get themselves into the optimal position whilst returning fire in the best way to not get shot and attack the offenders, which really is a kata, as I understand it. As some schmuck sitting on his couch, that really is what a kata is. But a gun kata is definitely unique and wholly exists within this film.
That's the suspense of disbelief.
Yeah, there's just a little bit of jump there to the gun kata.
I'm faster than a speeding bullet all of a sudden because I studied gun kata.
Right. Okay.
Cool.
So I felt like.
Are we moving into the things that we don't like?
No, I still wanted to sort of get into the special effects and I felt like the special effects from a positive standpoint, I thought there were actually some they really concentrated their efforts. Keep in mind this is 2002, they were sort of limited in what they could do. I thought as far as the CGI was concerned, they really concentrated their efforts on very specific things like doors opening and closing and stuff, and I thought that was kind of well done.
I felt like
the doors specifically.
They played their cards pretty well when they ventured into things that there were definitely a few moments for me where I could just say, yeah, that's fake as shit. That is fake as shit. But I feel like they played their hand very well with what they had, and they didn't rely upon that. I think at the time, the audience probably wouldn't even notice. They wouldn't have pulled them out of the movie. But it being a solid, 16 years after this movie's come out, 17 years now, we can see the cracks, in it. But overall, I think that, in the same way that like Jurassic Park, they played their practical effects when it was necessary or when it was appropriate. And then they relied on CGI for things that they didn't, the balance between special effects and computer-generated effects. I felt like they I can't necessarily fault them in this movie.
I don't think they relied overly heavily on computer backgrounds if they didn't have to. Obviously, they needed the dystopian. I don't know, New York,
New Vegas,
wherever they're at, with the blimps, with the zeppelins flying overhead and the backgrounds
made of lead.
It's totally fine. Yeah, exactly right. Totally fine. It's it just sets the scene. It's like, okay, cool. Yeah, a little bit more grime, maybe a little bit more gray in the color palette, like Colin was saying, for to save the scenes. But no, if they were on a set, they were on a set. It did feel like that. And, in times where they definitely needed the added fire effect or Zeppelin effect, it didn't feel bad. No, it didn't feel, overly cartoonish.
I can only think of one scene even that even pulled me out of the movie.
What's that?
And that was the one where he had left the city and he was just in quick order eradicating the search team that was looking for him. And there just happened to be a scene where he was back flipping and there was fire behind him, and that pulled me out of it for a split second. Gotcha. But that was really the only scene that jumped out at me personally.
I also I will say I kind of like that scene though, because there was the, again, maybe slightly flies in the face of the laws of physics, but there was some pretty fucking cool shit in that scene where there were some kind of shotgun these guys had, and they had him on both sides of his head, and he hits both of them at the same time, and the shotguns flip around in opposite directions, and he grabs him and fucking blows the guy's heads off. Okay,
that's something you see.
Yeah, it's not
exactly something you see in the comic books. Yeah.
Right? Yeah, just that's not the way physics works.
No.
But that's still pretty cool.
Yeah,
and I like that.
Exactly. You see that in video comic books. Yeah.
And shortly after that, he does the flipping scene, which agreed, maybe a little bit beyond the bounds of our universe and reality, but it looked really cool, and it sort of got the point across that this guy knew what the hell he was doing.
Yeah.
Transitioning a little bit from special effects to things we liked, and special effects to things we didn't like. Again, I completely agree with your point, Mark, that I think that this movie knew what they had to do, and they did it, and I dig that. However, they maybe didn't have the resources, or maybe they didn't allocate the resources appropriately. I felt like two things that did catch my eye were some of the early scenes of the movie, especially. There were some CGI like vehicles and like areas that I felt were like pretty obviously CGI, and I think you're right. At the time this movie came out, maybe not super obvious.
Are you talking about the Zeppelins?
Not the Zeppelins, but like there were like four-wheeled vehicles, like heavily armored vehicles that were traveling around the city early in the film. That sort of took me out of the scene because like they were pretty fake looking. But again, this is 2019 talking. In 2002, that probably looked amazing.
Were these in like establishing shots, like for scenes? Because I don't know if I had the same interpretation.
Yeah, so the specifically what I'm thinking of is like when they when Sean Bean and Christian Bale's characters first return to the city from their raid in, is it the Nethers? Is that what? Yeah. There is a sort of a pulled back shot of the entrance to the city, and there's some heavily armored vehicles that are roaming around and very sort of fake, kind of reminiscent of that. You guys remember that mouse screensaver back in like 1996? Yeah, sort of had that vibe going on.
Let's talk about some of the acting that we didn't like. Full disclosure, this is something that we wanted to talk about before we even turned on the movie. I was okay with most of the acting. There is who is oh man, he's not the antagonist. Who is his partner later on? What's that actor's name?
Taye Diggs.
Taye Diggs. Yeah, I don't know if it was intentional with the narrative of the movie or if it was just the actor kind of slipping his humanity figure. But there are some scenes where he's delivering the lines to Christian Bale's character and he smirks and he has some emotion to him. And within the universe of Equilibrium, this character is a cleric and should be at the highest order of those divorced from their emotions. And I picked up on some of those emotions, and I don't know if it was intentional to show some of the flaws within the system at large, or if that was Taye Diggs acting, if he was emoting, God forbid an actor emotes in
Again, yeah. Do we want to convey just stone cold, expressions the entire movie? Would that be entertaining, or would it be better to see
But
the tip of the hand?
I honestly don't even think it was that.
Know.
To be perfectly honest, I think your sort of like secondary opinion was probably right in that I think it actually may have been intentional and calculated. The first of all, sort of the revelation, again, major spoiler alert, the revelation that the father was in fact feeling, and that this was sort of all a ruse, I think suggests that Taye Diggs' character was feeling, and they had allowed him to feel to sort of push Christian Bale's character to where he was. I think also some of the other elements of the film sort of suggest that the writers and the director of the film were very aware of what was going on. Two scenes in particular that stick out to me were early in the film. Christian Bale's son refers to him as John several times, suggesting that is how he saw his dad. Slightly later on in the film, or about halfway through the film, Christian Bale's character wakes him up in the middle of the night inadvertently, and the kid turns over and says, "Good night, Dad." And it is a little bit after that it is revealed that his son is not actually taking his Prozium. He's not dosing, and it was because he was sort of disoriented and woken up in the middle of the night that he let it slip Dad as opposed to John. Another scene that sort of suggests this is early in the film. Christian Bale's character says "I'm sorry" to someone, and their response is essentially, "You don't know what that means. You've never felt that emotion before." And later in the film, after Christian Bale starts to feel, after he starts to sort of emote, he is basically sitting next to his friend's corpse, who he turned in, and he killed. He actually killed. He tracked down and killed, and he is crying, emotionally distraught, and is saying "I'm sorry" over and over, and it is basically a 180 from the "I'm sorry" that was given earlier in the film, and it really drives the point home that he has learned the meaning of that word and that emotion, and I feel like for that type of forethought in the film, I feel like Taye Diggs's emotion that creeps in, his anger, his gloating, his sort of grandiose and kind of operatic nature are something that would not have been without thought and without intention. Filmmakers, I hope I'm giving you the credit that you deserve, because if that were the case, that's sort of a brilliant way to approach it.
Mm-hmm. And yeah, I think I'm glad you brought up him turning in his partner, Sean Bean, early on in the film. Partridge, I think, is the other cleric. If I'm wrong, I'm wrong. But Sean Bean's character is like, we won't go easy, because they already know what's on the inside.
It is Partridge.
Partridge, and they don't. And even if they don't know what's going to happen at the end, they know. They're just cold and calculated up until that point, until they are not dosed. And so, like the fact that the other side, the antagonists, with Father and the other cleric, knowing what's going to happen, is like, oh yeah, we know. It kind of it's okay that they tip their hands a little bit, because I'll make sure they go easy on you. No, they won't.
Yeah.
Sean Bean already knows. Like, no, you won't. It's because that he's already seen it. He's already seen the awful side.
One of the things that I liked, but then also, I'm kind of conflicted on. I like how they weaponized certain facets of human personality. So one of the characters, played by Taye Diggs, talks about how he is an intuitive, and I think that we are all a mixture of intuitives and extroverts. But he's putting forth that because he is an intuitive, he is capable of reading others' emotions and can sometimes even sense them before other people even realize that they have them. I really liked how they were sort of, mystifying and weaponizing, more or less, just the mundane facets of everyday personality. I thought that was really interesting. But at the same time, it sort of flew in the face of the message of the movie. And I don't know if that was an issue with the writing. I don't know if it was intentional. I want to give them the benefit of the doubt, but you wouldn't have an interesting movie if it was just a couple of humans against a machine. In order for the clerics
Terminator begs to differ, Merc.
Yeah. In order for the clerics
No,
to
but
be
an
effective,
infiltrator, though, somebody who can read people, would be good, wouldn't it?
How can you sense others' emotions, or sense that they are starting to... that emotions are starting to percolate, if you are not in tune with your own emotions? So...
Yeah. No, I do agree
I
with that. I
think, though, they sort of... I think that they sort of... I'm going to go out on a limb, and then I'm going to defend it. I'm going to say that... I'm going to make the assumption that the Prosium does not affect everybody equally, based on, your particular, BMI, your brain chemistry, whatever, how strongly you feel emotions. Prosium can only dull them so much. that would be my assumption at the explanation for why certain clerics might be better at seeing through human emotion, detecting when you're not fully subdued in your emotional state. And I think sort of the defense for that with respect to the film is what Christian Bale's character feels when his wife is taken.
He's defensive.
He's first, before they even so for those of you who haven't seen the film, there is a scene where Christian Bale's wife is essentially taken and incinerated because of her sense offenses, which is basically lack of compliance with sensory annulment, sensory dulling,
thought crimes.
Thought crimes, essentially, in the Orwellian sense. Yeah. So basically, there is a scene right before she's taken where he can actually kind of sense that she's feeling this, and you get the vibe sort of that he's okay with her being feeling and emotional. And then they break in, and he, as Mark said, is defensive, and then she is taken, and then at the moment she is sentenced to this like horrible incineration death, and she is whisked away. There are several clerics standing there, and he is the only one who sort of turns his head and sort of follows her out. All of these things to me add up to a story where basically he was feeling emotion the whole time. It just may have been a very like dull sense of emotion, very, very minimized compared to what normal people feel, and that may be because he feels greater emotion overall if it's not dulled in the slightest sense.
And it wouldn't make for an interesting movie, so I have a hard time railing against it for this. But even in the incineration scenes, the characters that are being incinerated are wearing red robes to, I guess, sort of symbolize their...
It's all part of this like weird order of the society we don't have the full details on.
But I can't help but think symbolization is emotion. If we are devoid from any emotion and feeling, we don't need symbolism. We are 100% rational, and there wouldn't be this
need for
procedure of incineration. There would be,
it would just be jump shoots.
This person needs to be, incinerated. This person is trash. They are nothing, And so some of the thematic.
Totally. Like, hey, I get my big take on it is the architecture. Is like, why is the architecture so grandiose and large? Why is there a statue of Atlas in the father's office? It's like...
So 2 points. I would say that the statue of Atlas is sort of explained when it gets revealed that the father basically feels as well. However, I think with respect to the architecture and with respect to like the red robes, I think that is sort of explained a little bit in the sense that like it is very clear throughout the film that this has been a progression and sort of a slow burn. And it's something that, like, they're constantly coming out with, what is it, E10 or EC10 or something, in a new version of condemned material that is sort of, like, emotion-provoking, emotion-emitting, which suggests that in the last, however many years, they have been slowly adding things to the list that are considered emotionally provocative, that are basically like getting banned progressively. So I would say like the architecture probably preceded, that type of thing. Yeah. The robes that they used probably preceded, red as a color that is potentially inflammatory or,
I will concede the point too that even in the movie there is a moment where procedures are changed and the protagonist, Christian Bale's character, is questioning the the purpose or the efficacy of those changed procedures. Specifically, there is a point where they say that any offenders are to be shot on sight, and Christian Bale's he questions, well, we won't learn anything from them. You know, we won't. It'll be harder to root out the cause of the infraction if we immediately eradicate the problem, which is a rational response, which is kind of contradictory, but I guess it does lend itself to this idea that these rules are kind of fluid and they're changing. So
and they're autocratic. All right, so the next question we should really tackle is, would you recommend this film? Tim, looking at you.
Oh, hell no. This is not.
Strong words. Strong words, those are fighting words.
Hell no. Said.
I'm kidding. We're joking here on the first episode. Yes, I would recommend this. This is a fun piece of dystopic fiction. Is that the right word?
Yeah.
Yeah, dystopic fiction. Yep, that's the way I would classify it. It's fine. Christian Bale is, nailing it with his facial expressions. Sean Bean delivers an amazing poem from Yeats in the first 10 minutes of the film.
Shut up, Gen Y.
Yeah.
Yeet.
Yeats?
It's not what you think.
That's not what it is.
Judging you.
Bunch of fucking millennials over here talking about these.
We don't like
these yeeters.
Anyways, no, I think it as much as it is a collection of 1984, Fahrenheit 451, and Brave New World, I do appreciate the take on it. I do appreciate the talent and the effort put into it. Even if Gun Kung Fu is kind of stupid. It's not nearly as bad
awesome, more like it.
It's not nearly as bad as Wanted, with curving bullets mid-fucking trajectory.
Well, we all know Tim's opinion on that now.
The Mitch McConnell of Star Wars.
Sorry for cussing with bullet trajectory, but that's my take on it. No, do watch it. I think it's a fine mid-range sci-fi dystopia. So go for it.
Okay, this is Mark here talking again. I really enjoyed it. I'm glad that I watched it. However, caveat, I think if you're not into the world building, the universe building of this dystopian future, it's going to be completely lost on you. There are some people in my life who I don't think would care for the message or the story at all. I personally loved it. I would personally recommend it, with the caveat being, if you're not into jumping into a universe, into an environment, into like a world building, a lore, a lot of what I enjoyed most about this movie was the setting that it was put in. I guess I'm not going to be as, gung-ho with my recommendation. I'll say personally, I really enjoyed it, and I would recommend it to someone else who wants a kind of a cerebral sci-fi flick. But I'll pass it on. So
I'll start off by saying this was Mark's first time watching this movie. Yeah. Tim and I have seen it before. So I was super interested to get your take on whether or not you'd recommend it and how you felt about it. I recommended this movie to just about everybody I fucking meet. I really fucking dig this movie. I do kind of agree with Mark's perception of, like, if you're not super into sci-fi, if you don't like that sort of dystopic future narrative, it may not be the movie for you, but, like, I would still say, like, give it a whirl. Like, it's back to Tim's earlier point that, like, it may be kind of a reboot of a lot of these types of things. It has some elements that are wholly unique to it. Specifically things like the action sequences that are really not what we find so much in 1984 and A Brave New World. I think this has married The Matrix very well with sort of those classic Orwellian and Huxley tales. So I recommend this to everybody I meet. and I recommend it to you as well. Ratings. How are we feeling, gentlemen?
I'm gonna give this a solid. Is for me an 8. I don't know. I don't want to get too crazy with this, but maybe an 8.3 Bradberries. Tim, how did you feel?
I'll give this a solid, and again, I think you're taking the takeaway I had when I first saw it. So I'm going to give it what I originally felt, like 7 Orwells, out of 10.
Yeah.
I give this movie probably an 8.3, maybe an 8.4 Huxley's.
Okay. Now Huxley's. Now, what is the conversion of Bradberries Orwellians to Huxley's? Is it very similar?
So Orwellians to Huxley's is almost an even conversion. Bradberries, you have to go back in time, and then you have to get the Bradbury conversion back in the Jurassic period, and then by the time you've reached present day, it's about an equal conversion.
But you can only do that at a Halloween tree. That's the only way you can do it.
Correct.
The Halloween tree.
Yes, you have to put the currency into the Halloween tree.
Put the egg in the basket.
Yeah.
It's after midnight, folks.
So this has been 3 Men in a Basement. Thus far.
Or whatever we name it next
time. Stay tuned.
We could too, yeah.
This is the only reason, honestly, we're not sure of the name is to keep you intrigued and staying tuned.
And just make sure you subscribe. Like, share, and subscribe.
I don't know where you'll subscribe because we haven't set anything up yet, but you fucking better subscribe.
Probably MySpace, Zanga, LiveJournal. You could probably subscribe on LiveJournal.
Yeah, I'm going to subscribe, son.
So this is Colin McLeod.
Mark Kelp.
This is Tim Magic, and tread softly because you tread on my dreams.
Oh, tread softly.